Chinuch is the foundation of Yiddishkeit, and it's a from the yesodis of the obligations of parents and teachers to raise the kids to be proper Yidden Chassidim. So to say that the Torah or Yiddishkeit doesn't give us all the resources that we need and everything, 100% to be Matzliach and to be able to fulfill the Shlichus in the most optimal way, I think it's Kfira. So we have to be able to be loyal to these ideas, and the more that we connect with that we remain loyal, even when sometimes it seems that it's difficult, or it's it doesn't seem like it's mainstream, it's not the new way. I feel that the more we say remain loyal, the more bracha we see, the more hatzlacha we see.
I'm Yossi Korik. Welcome to Among Chassidim by Der Herr, an ongoing farbrengen about life as a chassid, our vibrant connection with the Rebbe, and inspired living shaped by the way he teaches us each and every day. How are you, Rabbi Yossi?
Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. How are you, Rabbi Yossi?
Baruch Hashem, doing good. And it's good to, I see you have the whole Der Herr library in back of you, Our Days, and the Rebbe will find a way. These are the important svarim that you have.
Big fan. The hair is a very big priority in our life.
Okay, very good. It's mine too. So we have something. Yeah, that's another thing in common. I don't know if at the same level, but you're probably more than me.
I don't know. We'll be left to be seen.
Okay, you have something that I understand is unique in your shlichus. And maybe we'll start off with that. I believe that besides or in addition, or I don't know exactly where it's holding, but besides a typical Chabadas, you're also at the forefront of an educational institution, a Meset Chinuch. Is that right?
Baruch Hashem, yes, that's correct.
Okay, so not every person that we talk to, I mean, you're not the first mechanech on the podcast, but not every person has that. I think every chassid is a mechanech, and especially if you have physical children, so it's at the forefront of everybody's mind. But if you have your Reishe Veruba involved in it, I'm sure you have a lot more. You think about it a lot more in a more strategical way than others.
I would hope so. That's definitely the idea. And the background of that is when we moved out in Shlichus now almost 20 years ago, Baruch Hashem. So we came to a typical small town Chabad house community in the suburb of Sacramento. No plans for any moistus chinuch or anything of that sort. We started with what typically small Chabad houses start with, the little Hebrew school, a tefillin club. Here and there, tried to make a Shabbos minyan, Shabbos meals, Yom Tovim, regular women's circles, regular things. And Baruch Hashem, we had our own children and started to have more children, and they're growing up. And we really wanted something proper for them for chinuch. So the options that were available at the time, we weren't fully satisfied, not because necessarily the option is not a good option, but we wanted more for our kids. And there was a shtickle hishtalshlus hadvarim, but there was a few other young shluchim families that were in the area as well at the same time. So I took it upon myself. I started to teach my own kids, and other shluchim heard about it. So they decided, if you're already teaching also, maybe you can have my kids join in. So, without planning, without being something that we prepared for or set out to do, before we knew it, I had a small class of about 4 or 5 boys, and we were learning. They're young kindergartners. And then there was another class that came in. My wife taught, and I taught, and with a little bit of time, we started to bring out girls to help to teach. And Baruch Hashem, from there it evolved into a full-fledged Moised Chinuch. that really at the core of it was originally for Shluchim's kids, but eventually it developed into beyond that. We started to have some community families join. At first, it was some frum families, Bali Tshuva, that living in the Sacramento community, which is a more established Chabad house over there, and the Rabbi and Rebbetzin Mendy Cohen, well-known, very special shluchim. So under their community, they have some Bali Tshuva and other Mekuravim. So they started to join in as well. And Baruch Hashem, since then as well, we were able to have a certain degree of Hatzlacha, still minimal, and it's something that we hope to be able to expand and to grow, having local community kids join in. And it's something that personally I feel very passionate about, because if we really look back at the Sichos of the Rebbe in the early years, and Bechlal, I mean, the theme never really leaves the Rebbe's Sichos, and Farbrengen's Chinuch is front and center, and everything the Rebbe always spoke about and encouraged and pushed for, and was heavily involved in. But especially in the early years, you see like there's a lot of talk about the concept of taking just regular kids and bringing them to Chinuch al Taras HaKodesh. We know that the early shluchim, the first shluchim that the Rebbe sent out, really that was primarily their focus. There was these schools, these day schools that were started in different communities in the United States and then also abroad, in the shluchim of Morocco and other places where they went out. It was really a big focus, or even if you could say the primary element of it was schools, was teaching kids. And the idea was to take regular kids, non-frum kids, and bring them into Moisad Chinuch. It wasn't about making schools for Lubavitcher kids. Obviously, that's no less of a priority, but that wasn't so much necessarily where the Rebbe was addressing when he was sending the shluchim and the focus. And I think that there was certainly a significant hatzlacha in the shluchim that were involved in that. And it seems that for whatever reason, over the decades, that approach or that concept maybe has died down a little. And I don't know the philosophical backgrounds to all of that, but I think that part of it is that Lubavitch itself started to grow. And that in itself became already a focus of its own, to have chinuch for Lubavitchers. So a lot of the communities that originally were just far-flung communities became centers for Lubavitcher, for Anash communities. And many of those schools became Anash schools, which is appropriate and what should be. And it's hard to really balance between, having a full-fledged Anash school and then bringing in non-frum kids into that environment. It doesn't necessarily work out so well. And I feel that in our situation, where it's like, what's the lashon kalkoloson zui takanoson, right? Something like that. Where the fact that we're in a small community, and because we don't have a big full-fledged Anash community, so that gives us in a certain way an advantage, that even though we designed our school and we're catering it to a level that's appropriate for shluchim's kids, for Anash kids, learning chumash, mishnayos, gemara, it's not watered down. The kids who are Baruch Hashem going through the Moisad here, they're graduating 8th grade and ready to go into Mesivta or into high school, the boys, the girls, and they have all the skills and the background that they need to be able to be matzliach as far as their learning capabilities. But because we're a small environment, it's easier and it's more like realistic to be able to adapt, to be able to have a kid that has no background whatsoever, to somehow give him the support and the ability to mainstream.
So I think you're saying that historically, this started by the Friedrich Rebbe, and you're saying it continued in the Rebbe's Nesias, so like Morocco and the early Shlichus 100%. Was, the best way to do Afatzas Hamayonis and Afatzas Hayadus is to mechanech children and make sure that every Jewish kid. How many times did the Rebbe speak about that? Tausende Kinder, there's thousands of kids in New York. The Rebbe says that they're not getting a chinuch. This is like something that the Rebbe said all the years. And you're saying whatever reason, you're saying just technically some of the the Achit Tmimim and some of these older Lubavitch institutions turned into Hanash schools because the communities change, or maybe because of the Hatzlach of the Shlichus, the Rabbi Tshuva and things like that. You're saying in essence, this is an integral part of the work of the Rebbe and of Lubavitch, of Afatzas Hayadus, is the best way to do that is with a school. That's what you're saying.
100%. I mean, think about it for a second. We know that the Rebbe spent time with kids in a disproportionate manner compared to any other Rebbe before, and Bichlal, any Nasi B'Yisrael.
I think Adayim, yeah.
Right, it's a davar yodua. But even the times that Rebbe spent with kids, the children's rallies, the Lag B'Omer parades, who were the kids that were there? Of course, there were Anash kids, but there was a big push and there was a big effort to bring in the release time kids and these non-from kids, and the Rebbe spoke to them the same way he spoke to everybody else. The expectation that it seems to me, at least, this is totally my. I'm not that's the way it has to be or this way it is, but it seems to me that the Rebbe's expectation is that somehow we could take a regular Jewish kid off the street and obviously it has to be properly thought through and organized in a way that it makes sense, but be able to bring that kid and give him a full-fledged chinuch. A Hebrew school is a beautiful thing. Don't get me wrong; it's an amazing thing. I think every shliach that's in a community should have a Hebrew school and has to be able to do everything possible to be able to bring a kid into Hebrew school. But let's be honest: how much can a Hebrew school affect? You're going to maybe teach them how to read, teach them a few Yesodis and Yiddishkeit, which is beautiful. It's amazing. I'm not knocking it. But if you could take a kid, that same kid, and teach him Chumash, Mishnayos, and Gemara, and mamish, like, give him full-fledged Yiddish chinuch, it's uncomparable.
I think we see this across the board. For example, camp, right? Gan Yisrael, that was established by the Rebbe in the Chafs and the Yuds, whatever the Chafs when it started.
The Yuds started the camp.
The Yuds and the Chafs when it started in the beginning. I think a huge percentage of the kids were for sure not Lubavitch, but not even necessarily from homes.
100%.
And that was a chinuch that they got, and I think, like you're saying, just it happens organically that it turned into an anash. I think, like you're saying, the Lag B'Omer parades were full of people full of kids that might have gone to public school, whether it's through release time or some other thing. Yeah. So, and the fact that things shifted.
I mean, I don't know the numbers. You know this information better than me because this is something that the hair has written about. But with 10,000 kids, what's like an appropriate number for Lag B'Omer parade?
I don't know, but it sounds right.
How many Lubavitch kids were in Crown Heights at that time?
For sure, it was probably a minority.
Maybe
those rallies,
maybe 1,000. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so, who were these other kids? They were probably other from kids, but a big percentage were not from kids.
And I think also part of it was that at that point, at least in New York, Lubavitch was taking kids also without tuition. I think that's a part of that was part of the draw. I don't know how that works today. I don't know if that works today or how that works today. But that was I know quite a few stories and quite a few people that that's how they became Lubavitch Chassidim, because their parents got either cheaper or free tuition to camp or to Bedford and Dean or whatever it was. And even if it's not someone that became a full-fledged chassid, but had that chinuch, in
100%.
Very interesting. So this is so at this point, this is your Iker Shlichus.
It's one of the Ikrim. I mean, Baruch Hashem, we still have a full-fledged Chabad house community with all the programs and shiurim and the men's groups and women's groups and Shabbosim and Yom Tovim and Hebrew school as well, camp. What you have in a regular community. The Fierach, a small community today, I have to be careful how I use that term because Baruch Hashem, Shlichus has expanded. When I moved out almost 20 years ago, what was considered a small community today is like Ir Ve'im.
Right.
But
and 20 years before it was the same,
Right. No, okay. I don't know if 20 years before was the same because really, from Gimel Tammuz, things exploded, and there wasn't necessarily such a big difference.
Among Chassidim is brought to you by Chassidishe der Herr. We live in a chaotic world, a world where for us Chassidim, as a seinu, lei ra'inu, we do not have the ability to hear and see the Rebbe on a daily basis. Yet we know that the Rebbe is very much with us, and the Chassidus Chabad is alive and thriving more than ever before. One needs to only tap into it. Chassidishe der Herr provides you and your family with the tools necessary to tap into all of this. Whether it's the monthly magazine, the way it all began, whether it's Der Herr books, Der Herr online content, and so much more. Men, women, and children throughout the world benefit and use these tools on a daily basis. Whether it's children enjoying the children's magazine that comes along with the regular Der Herr, or enjoying the children's podcast, whether it's Bachrim in yeshivas receiving the Der Herr, whether it's girls in high schools enjoying Der Herr Club in their local high school. People all over the world and from all walks of life enjoy and utilize these tools and take advantage of it. If you're not already subscribed to the Herr Monthly Magazine, do so today at derher.org. That's derher.org. Der Herr is a dynamic organization which is committed to continue providing these tools, grow on a constant basis, and do all that we can to help this effort. Baruch Hashem, it takes a lot of resources and finances to make this all happen. You can be part of Der Herr through your financial support as well, through visiting our website derher.org, or through contacting us to setting up a meeting. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the podcast.
I'm extremely grateful for this chus. Like I said before, it wasn't something we set out to do. It wasn't something we planned for. But it's definitely become front and center of the Shlichus, and Baruch Hashem, we've been very fortunate in the Rebbe's brachas and koiches that we have now 3 younger light that live in the area. One lives mamish in our community, mishpacha. Him and his wife, Rabbi Yoel and Varlei Edelman, they're completely devoted to the Shlichus, to the Chinuch. They both teach full time. And we have 2 other families as well that teach in the school, who have other shluchas nearby, small shluchas, but they spend a very big majority of the time teaching. So my role right now in the school is more in the administrative aspect. I'm the principal and the administrator, taking care of the hanhola aspect of the school. I'm not as involved in the teaching itself. And it's a tremendous bracha. It's a tremendous chus, and I see personally in our shlichus in the community, in our personal life, in every aspect, that the brachas and the koiches and the everything that comes in the chus of the chinuch, it's unbelievable.
So let me ask
And
you a
it's clear
question.
that it's definitely something that Rebbe wants.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. What are the is there like a unique, you could say, challenge, or maybe something that needs to be focused on today in chinuch, more today than before?
You mean b'chalal?
In general, yeah. What is there like something specific that you've realized over the years of being involved in chinuch?
Mm-hmm. I don't see myself as a professional expert mechanic in that sense, but I do find, and I'm sharing this, from my own personal experience, with the small moistat chinuch that we have, and my own interactions, personal interactions in chinuch. I do feel very strongly that staying honest and connected to the yesoidus of what has been the Messiah of Chinuch for L'Doira is the best route. It's the best approach. That's the full proof. We know this works, and the teitzos of that, I think, are the healthiest, the best and the most direct. And obviously, it's a big challenge to be able to raise Chassidishe kids, and you need a tremendous amount of theater d'shmaya and brachas and keiches, and there's very fine and beautiful chassidim and people that are not always zoiche, and people that not necessarily, and there are zoiche. So it's not chas v'shalom to point to say in any way, this is the way to do it. You do like this, and it's going to come out like that. It's not a recipe book that you bake your cake and these amount of degrees of these ingredients, and muftach that's how it's going to come out. But I do feel that the more that we remain honest and connected and loyal, I think that's the word, to the Messiah of Chinuch, the way it's been the better chances and the more brach and hatzlacha we'll have. Can move on. There's changes in reality and different things, and things have to be understood and discussed to be able to see how it's applied in the current environment and so on. But a lot of these new modern fads and new ideas and new concepts, I personally don't connect with them that much, and I don't see that. It's trial and error, and we don't know where that's going to go. And we have a Messiah. The Chinuch is the foundation of Yiddishkeit, and it's from the Yesodis of the obligations of parents and teachers to raise the kids to be proper Yidden Chassidim. So to say that the Torah or Yiddishkeit doesn't give us all the resources that we need and everything, 100% to be Matzliach and to be able to fulfill the shlichus in the most optimal way, I think it's kfira. So we have to be able to be loyal to these ideas, and the more that we connect with that we remain loyal, even when sometimes it seems that it's difficult, or it's it doesn't seem like it's mainstream, it's not the new way. I feel that the more we remain loyal, the more bracha we see, the more hatzlacha we see.
What's an example of this?
A specific example? I mean, I think there's many things in the the context of I'll take an example that's maybe not as extreme, if we want to say. I mean, it could be other people may see it as extreme in different ways, but this is something that Rebbe spoke about himself, and we have the aspect of what priorities do we set in the chinuch as far as limud chol and things in that way. So I'm not getting into the specifics to which subjects and altaras hakodesh and whatever this. I think there's a bit of a opportunity for every community, every situation to be able, define themselves and understand. But I think that the more that we take the Rebbe's words seriously and kipshutam, the more we see that hatzlacha. And a lot of people, even among Anash, we have concerns. But what about a tachlis? What about a parnasa? What about what's going to be with the future? And this all really boils down back to the idea of bitachin, that we believe, that we understand that everything that we have comes from the Eibishter, and when we follow the Eibishter's way, that's the best. That came chayenu verech yameinu. This is the best way. The Torah is Teiras Emes and Teiras Chesed. It's the Eibishter gave us the best way to live. So if we remain loyal to how the Rebbe wants that we should focus and emphasize in the chinuch of our kids, then that's the best option. And this is not something necessarily that starts only later on when the kids are already finishing high school and there's talk about yes college, no college, this kind of thing, or not. Even from the Yesodis, from the younger ages, where do we put the emphasis? Where's our focus? And our priorities in what we want our kids to learn. And I use these ideas even in conversations that I have with non-frum families that I'm trying to encourage them to come to the school. We do have English and math in the school, so that as core subjects, and we don't teach other subjects in the school specifically. And I explain to the families the value of what you're getting out of the chinuch. as a side sales pitch, I'll tell them, science and history or social studies, other things you could supplement on your own. You don't necessarily need us, but for Yiddishkeit, you can supplement on your own. And if Yiddishkeit's important to you, this is an opportunity. If you're going to go to public school, you're going to have lots of other problems that you're going to have to deal with. And today we see that this is becoming a shift in the minds of people, b'chlal, in society, and people are open to listen to this idea. But I explain to people that Chinuch is not about just teaching subjects. It's not about amassing knowledge. Knowledge you can learn anytime. Chinuch is about the Yesodis, Emunah, and Yerushalayim. I recently came across a sikh. I don't remember the exact source, so forgive me that I'm not giving you the exact source. But recently I came across a sikh. The Rebbe says there that Amol, it used to be that the chinuch in the schools was primarily to teach Pashut information, Chumash, Mishnayos, Gemara. You had to know Vimilerent, you had to know how to learn, what to learn, and information. And Yerushalayim, you would learn at home. That's how it was Amol. Since today, it's not necessarily reliable or it's not always available to learn Yerushalayim at home. So therefore, it became now the responsibility of the Moises Chinuch to teach Yerushalayim. And the Rebbe says, not only as a side thing, also Yerushalayim, but that becomes the Iker. That's the Iker Chinuch of the Moises to teach Yerushalayim. And Chochmah, the information, Chochmah, when I'm talking about Chochmah Sumet Sa'ilam, I'm talking about Chochmah of Torah. The information of Torah, if you don't get to as much as you wanted to, it's okay, because you can always make it up later on. But the Yesodis of Yerushalayim, it's not always easy to get back if you didn't get it as a child. If you didn't have it, the Yesodis right there from the beginning. It's connected to the famous idea that says, Chachma b'goyim ta'amin, Torah b'goyim al ta'amin. So the Rebbe says basically the Torah is the Yerushalayim. And today, the responsibility of the Moises Chinuch is to teach Torah, to teach Yerushalayim. And if we respect that, if we recognize that, even for ourselves, not just how we talk to a non-frum family potentially is going to come join the Moises Chinuch, but even for our own selves. What are our values? Sometimes you hear from parents, even things like, oh, how many blat gemara the kid going to learn this year? And is it in what level? Is it the mitzuyonim and ish mitzuyonim? And I'm not undermining the importance of pushing children and encouraging them to be matzliach and to learn more. And there's Baruch Hashem many kids who are very muchsher, they're very capable. They could and they need to be pushed, because if they're not, that's side's a waste, and side they also start to get bored and they get involved in other things. So it's important, but that's not the priority. How do we measure the success of a Shnas Alimudim is not based on how many blat gemara they covered, and if they know more of it Baal Peh or less of it Baal Peh. That's all very important. But I think the most fundamental hatzlach of Shnas Alimudim is to see, have there been instilled real values of Yerushalayim in the kids, and the Yerushalayim is expressed in every aspect. V'medavint, in how they have hanhagas between each other, how they have Avas Yisrael, the respect for how they learn Torah. All of these things is aspects of Yerushalayim, and of course, as Chassidim, his kashrus is part of Yerushalayim. It's a certain edelkeit that you instill the values of his kashrus in the children. That's the most tangible Yerushalayim, because it's something that is much more relatable to us. And I hope I'm not saying things here that sound borderline. I don't know, but I think that our kashrus to the Rebbe is a representation of our connection to the Eibishter.
Mm-hmm. This theme that you mentioned, that the Rebbe says that Beis Chinuch is not just about what you learn; it's about the environment. I don't know which sikha you're referring to, but this is a theme that I've seen across Igros Kodesh. There's many letters from the Rebbe to this effect, and it's 100%, and that's why there has to be room in every Moises Chinuch for all types of kids, even academically, right? Even if a child is you talk about the mitzuyanim, but what about if a child's not a mitzuyan, but he needs that Chassidishe environment? And I imagine the same theme applies later on as well. In yeshiva, for sure, when you're older bacher, older girl, that's when you're molded I think with little kids, people are more alike. When they get older, they start developing into their own character. I mean, it's something that there may be someone that doesn't excel academically, but they're benefiting tremendously from the avir, from the atmosphere of the Meisel Chinuch that they're in, and that's as important or more important because that's who they are. That's what shapes who they are, right?
100%, 100%. And I think that, you know, a lot of these things that you're talking about in the world of the Masiftas and in the high schools, and that's definitely not an area that I'm personally involved in. I have my own children, Baruch Hashem, but not in managing a moised, and it's in its own. It has its own set of challenges and things, so it's definitely not my place to comment on that. But I do believe that a lot of the symptoms, if you want to say, of the challenges and situations that can develop and become manifest in a more greater and bigger way, like you described, when it comes to going into the Masiftas and in the high schools, is really values and things that start in the school and in the younger age. I'll give you another example. That you asked me for an example. You have the concept of mashmas and Kabbalah Sil. Today, there's a notion in the modern world that you have to talk to your children, you have to listen to their opinion, and you don't come from the top down. Everything has emes, everything has value, and everything has truth. So I'm not negating the idea. No, it's not a boot camp, and it's not the idea of do as I say or else. But the value, the concept of mashmas, that a child needs to know that, yeah, you have an opinion, and yes, you have desires, and you have things you want to do. You do want to do it, you don't want to do it, but that's secondary. The first you saw it is the Eibishter, and we do what the Eibishter says. And that's something, that a child needs to know, and it needs to be ingrained in their consciousness from the ground up, from the young age up. Take, if you have, for example, I'm just giving this as a theoretical example because I'm not involved, so I don't know for sure. But if you have a bocher that maybe he's not a muhshir in learning, and it's hard, it's diminished, but he has lachluchis of Chassidishkeit, and he wants to be in a proper mesifta, and he wants to be in the avir, the fabringens, and the miftzayim, and fine, but if he has the yesoid of mashmas and Kabbalah Sil, so maybe he doesn't learn so much, but he comes to the Sdarim, and he participates, and he sits by davening. I don't think there's going to be any mesifta that's going to kick out a bacher like that. Even if it's not learning, if he's not passing the test, he maybe sits and talks the whole day. That I don't think, it could be I'm wrong, but I don't think any mesifta is going to kick out a guy like that. But if a guy silent and he's disrupting and he's not showing up, I'm not here to defend the moisters or not in one way or another, and I'm not involved in that degree, but I can only imagine that creates more of a challenge. So if the child from the youth is ingrained in this value, that's the way it should be. I once had an incident with one of our talmidim in the school. So I was walking down the hallway, and I saw Talmud was standing outside the class. So I said to him, "Why aren't you in class?" And he said, "Because I don't want to learn. I don't want to learn what they're learning in class." So what are they learning? Learning math. He said, "I don't want to learn math." Okay. So what do you want to do? He said, I don't want to do something else. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to go in. I don't want to learn. I said to him, "You don't want to learn it?" So he said, "No." So he said, "Wow, that's really, really amazing." He said, "What do you mean it's amazing?" He looks at me, "What do you mean?" I said, "I think you have an amazing opportunity." He said, "Well, what opportunity do I have?" I said, "You have an opportunity now to go and learn something you don't want to learn just because that's what the Seder is right now. That's what the Eibishter wants you to do. Right now, the Eibishter wants you to go and learn this math. So if you want to learn it, so that's great. That's beautiful. Then you're learning it because you want to. Maybe you're also doing it because that's what you're supposed to, but you want to. But you know how happy the Eibishter becomes when you do something that you're supposed to do when you don't want to do it? He's much happier than if you do it because you want to do it. So because you don't want to do it, now you have a huge opportunity. If you go in the class now and sit down and do your math work, the Eibishter is going to be smiling like you've never seen before. He looked at me, "Really?" I said, "Absolutely." He ran into class, he went and learned. I think that if a kid goes out of a Shnas Alimudim with such a value, I don't care how much Gemara he learned. I don't know how much Chumash, Mishnah, Sichos. I think if such a concept is successfully ingrained in the mind and the heart of a child, I think it's the most successful Shnas Limudim you can have. These values, these are the things that are going to help this person when he's a Bachar in Yeshiva, when he's a younger man in his own mishpacha, and when he's a Shliach, a businessman, whatever he is. These are the values that the world doesn't have today. The concept that a person is given over, committed to doing something because that's what you're supposed to do. This is who you are. These are the values. And if you look a lot of the Rebbe's responses and sichos and things, even when the Rebbe responds to people, dilemmas and challenges, oftentimes it's kind of this idea. The Rebbe shifts the perspective. The person is saying, I don't like it. I'm in pain. It hurts. I'm upset. I'm this. And the Rebbe, instead of like dealing with the actual emotion that the person's having, he just shifts the view and essentially takes him out of himself and brings him into recognizing the shlichus, the achrayus, the opportunity, the schus that he has, and then say, ufgeheben, you're like, you're in a different place now. You can't get that in the world. The world doesn't have that. It doesn't exist.
I think just the opposite. I think the world today,
exactly. The world pushes you down.
Tells you how you're feeling, and therefore don't do what you don't want to do, and don't do something that makes you uncomfortable, and raises the generation or generations that way. And lav dafka are the results so pretty.
100%. I think you're saying it very politely, but I would say dafke lav.
No, it's actually an interesting concept because you hear the way people talk about how to deal with hardships. I mean, to me, it was always what people are talking about doesn't seem in line with, I guess, Torah values are very hard to, which page of Chumash and which Blat Gemara you're referring to. So I'll tell you the Torah values that I learned from the Rebbe. It seems if you read like you said, if you read the Igris, the Rebbe very much is pushing people, towards what's good for them as opposed to what they perceive to make them feel good in the moment, and flipping the conversation. And I think if it comes from a harsh way and you tell someone you're no good and therefore do kach l'kach, that's not really effective. But the Rebbe, I think, brings out how they have the ability to rise to the occasion. I think that's I mean, the letters that Rebbe's usually talking to adults, right? That are dealing with this.
You even have letters to kids.
Yeah, we just in the Hair for Kids magazine, we've been featuring letters to a letter to children every single month. Yeah. In the upcoming ones, a kid wrote to the Rebbe, "Is it true that the Rebbe speaks all languages?" And the Rebbe says, "No, unfortunately, I do not. I do not speak all languages." It's very interesting. The story that you said before that you told the child, it's a story of Tzemach Tzedek, I think. That he said,
fill me in.
I think it was at Tzemach Tzedek.
Oh, that he said, "Was soll ich tun, als ich will
Yeah, Chassidishe said he doesn't have a cheshek to learn. And Tzemach Tzedek said, what should I do that I do have a cheshek?
Correct.
You have an advantage.
This idea is not is Torah. I mean, everything is the Yesodis of Yiddishkeit. I think, to me personally, what I feel, one of the chidushim of the Rebbe's Torah and the Rebbe's approach, Bechlal, the Rebbe's Torah Shviz, Malchus. Malchus, the whole kavod of Malchus is to bring the Shechina Lamata Ba'aretz, right? The whole point is it has to become begashmius real. To be an oivid, to be some maimin bashem in Yichudei law, that's it's good for der Harisha, der Hasheni, der Shlishi, der Hashvi. The whole point of der Hashvi has to be lamata ba'aretz. If it's not lamata ba'aretz, if the tachten shein tachten lamata mimenu, if the physical of the world doesn't understand, doesn't relate, doesn't connect with the idea of the Yichudei law of whatever it may be in the Emunah and the Bitachon and the high ideas, then it's not der Hashvi. So I think one of the things that we see in the Rebbe's approach, Bechlal, is that there's a certain pshitus, there's a certain simplicity. Of course, it's not simple. The Rebbe is sharing very profound and deep concepts, but the manner and the method, how the Rebbe conveys it, is through such simplicity that when you hear it, when you see it, it makes you think like, how did I not notice that on my own? But obviously, it's not something we would notice. But the Rebbe just changes the angle, and it's like suddenly now in this perspective, the whole reality is different. So let's talk. Give an example. The Rebbe is everything is emes. There's no bluffing. There's no everything's 100% emes. So the Rebbe looks at a person. The Rebbe sees him how he is in Mekayre Harishain. What's the person? The person is an Neshama Elikis. He's Chelek Elikam Imal. That's who he is at the core. Everything else is secondary. It's added. It's things that positive, not positive, whatever things that stick on. So when the Rebbe gives somebody guidance, the Rebbe responds to somebody in their challenge, in their difficulty, whatever it may be. So essentially, what the Rebbe is doing to the person is he's saying, you're looking at yourself, you're looking at your situation on a very external reality of who you really are. Let me bring you back to your Moker Rishin. And when you identify yourself in that way, Memela, your problem is non-existent. You've shed the whole problem of Lechatchila. It's like, it's not that you have a problem they have to deal with. The whole thing is Lechatchila gone. There was a mine, I believe you posted it in the WhatsApp a few months ago, a while back. And you may remember, I don't remember the details, the exact thing, but there was somebody wrote to the Rebbe something that he needs to be able to be misgaber on the Yetzer, and the Rebbe said misgaber, just something like just do what you're supposed to. Do you remember what I'm referring to?
No.
It was I don't have it on my hand, but the point was that the person was looking at it that I have a challenge and I have to be misgaber on my challenge. Look at Torah Samusar. Look, what's the approach? You have Ra, and you have to fight the Ra. Don't do this. We have Shmirasai, and all these things are all true things. We have to do all these things. But what's the approach? There's a Ra, there's a negativity, and you have to be misgaber. You have to have koiches. The Rebbe suddenly says, take a different approach. It's not about being misgaber. You betivacha, in your nature, your true natural self doesn't do these things. You have nothing to overcome. You just have to tune back in to your natural self. Obviously, how do we do that? You need a lot of chassidishe, and we have to connect to the truth. But that's the idea in every aspect. So a lot of these concepts that maybe you were foreign, you take a yid and you give him to do a mitzvah. The whole concept of mitzvahim. You go take a yid off the street and tell him to put on tefillin. It's not just that we say, oh, there's other kreisen, other sects of Yiddish of the Jewish community. They don't understand. They don't buy into this idea. How do you take a yid? Even you think the Chassidim or the Rebbe Rashab or the Rebbe Marash would understand what that meant? I mean, to some, it's a foreign concept. Even when the Rebbe introduced these concepts, many of the Alter Chassidim also were struggling with the idea. It wasn't necessarily, that, but the Rebbe is showing us that the real Metzius of this guy in the street, who is he? Today we've in many ways become accustomed to see people that way. We see a yid right away. We look at the shama kum. You bring a guy in, simchas Torah, come dance. Recently I saw the story from Jam or whatever. You take a guy off the street and they bring him into to Lubavitch. Within a month, he's having yechidus to the Rebbe for his birthday, like he's been a bacher in yeshiva, like a guy. I don't know if he's eating kosher. But the Rebbe's not mechalek. It's a yid. That's it. It's the emes.
I don't know if this is true what I'm saying, but I noticed today we have also outside of Lubavitch people being misasik and bring people closer to Yiddishkeit, Kiruv, etc. So I don't know if this is a true thing, but I noticed that sometimes when the people that are doing this talk, they use like a sprach, like this X amount of Bali Tshuva, and we have a Shabbaton, and we tell them this and we tell them that, in order to hook them in, and X amount to get involved. It's like a whole statistical game with the tactics and turnover rates. And I think that's a fundamental. I mean, it's a nice thing, but I think it's a fundamental difference in approach. Like you're saying, that the way the Rebbe is mechanech us and the way shlichus is done, the way is that we're not here to figure out a way in order to get you to there. We're here to be megali your neshama. So it's going to be a mitzvah. It's going to be a
100%.
shir Torah. It's going to be, I think there's practical implications in the way we look at a person, the way we deal with people because of this.
I think that many of the Kreisen, if they knew for sure that a certain individual is not shaykh to become a Baal Tshuva, it's not a candidate. There's no point. What's the point to bring him in to learn in the yeshiva or to come to the Shabbaton if somehow there's a guarantee this guy is never becoming frum? Forget about it. It's not happening. Okay, so next, he's not a candidate.
Right.
For the Rebbe, the way the Rebbe taught us, I mean, of course, we want to be mekadav every year to every part of Torah. It's not not belittling the importance of making Baalei Tshuva. I mean, mekadav a year to 100%, making Chassidim. We want every year to be learning Chitas, Rambam, Miftzoyim, Talucha, everything. That's but if all he's gonna do one time is a mitzvah film, is that? That's and the Rebbe. The Rebbe says this is what the Alter Rebbe said in Tanya. There's that famous Sikha. I think he's putting Tafshin Chai. I don't know, one of the early years. The Rebbe is like it's like with a Chai. Nitzchi, I don't know the exact words, but the mitzvah is Nitzchi la'elam voed. It stays forever. One mitzvah. That's Chassidus. But until Deir Shvi, who understood what the Alter Rebbe said in Tanya, that it meant bepoyo mamish to go schlep a guy off the street and put on tefillin.
Yeah. It's interesting that. So I think so. Back to the chinuch for a minute. There are, and I'm not here to. I don't view these conversations as figuring out problems that need to be fixed. We're talking to Chassidim together. I think that sometimes that you're saying that the proven way of chinuch is the best way. Obviously, not everyone that was a mechanech 50 years ago was doing it right? So I think there's certain things you can learn. One thing I feel personally might have been lacking. I mean, I'm not so old, but at this point, it's a few years ago since I've been in a yeshiva or a school. One of the things I might have been lacking that I think has changed is that there are certain people that are mechanchim that haven't really thought about, the chinuch. They're trying to run a system, they're trying to run a school, they're trying to run a classroom. I mean, I myself, I was a learning teacher in camp. It was all about, okay, how do I get the kids to sit down and listen and not call out. But ultimately, true chinuch is when the mechanech connects to a Talmud and views, and views their Talmud as a son and is invested in them. And so that's something that was always supposed to be there, just might not have existed always in all of the Meistus Chinuch. Is that something that you feel is important to focus on today?
100%, 1,000,000%. I mean, I think it's an important concept. I personally, and I feel that oftentimes people get like confused or get carried away. The Torah is emes. Yiddishkeit is emes. That doesn't mean that every frum yid is emes. Just because somebody is religious, just like you have a non-frum person will say, "Oh, I don't like the religious because they're scammers," all right? Because one frum guy scammed him. And you're going to say now that well, he's frum. So if he's frum, then he represents Yiddishkeit.
This is the frum
everything
way.
he does is listen. We're still individuals, human beings that are not perfect, and we have faults, and we have a Yetzer Hara, and we do things we shouldn't do. Even among Chassidim, this reality exists. It's not. None of us are perfect. So when we say that it's important to look at the Messiah of Chinuch and to remain loyal to that, I'm not saying that every single teacher that ever historically was a mechanech, we should model and say, Kosher'e v'kadesh. This is the way to do it. I think back then it was true, and I think it's true today. It's always going to be true that there are people that are more loyal and more sincere and more committed and more dedicated to doing their role the way they should. And there are people that are less. And everyone has to grow and has to become better. And certainly I think that there's a very beneficial and positive idea that Bechlal in the more recent times, Chinuch has become much more a topic, and there's a lot more effort and a lot more emphasis in enhancing and bettering the style and the moises of chinuch. So I think that nakuda, that gang, that idea is very positive and it's very important. And I do think that exists today more than Amol. Amol used to be malamed, mechanech, especially if you couldn't find any other job, go be a teacher and figure it out. Go in the classroom, you have the kids, whatever, figure it out one way or another. And today we take things a lot more serious. It's become much more structured in that way. And I think that's a positive thing. It doesn't mean that we have to throw in the garbage the Messiah because now we figure it out. No, we still have to. It's good that we're more careful to make sure to hire teachers that Taka want to do it and Taka care about it. And we want to give more resources, more training, more support. All of that is very good. But none of that has to be outside of the Messiah. The Messiah is still the emes of Torah. That's what we have. And that's how we should train our teachers. That's how we should give them the values. And 100%, somebody who's lax in chinuch either shouldn't be there or they need to shape up. It's very important. The fact that a teacher has to connect with the Talmud in a personal way, mamish care about him and or her, and really be there and connect in that way is fundamental. And I think today there's more of an emphasis, there's more talk about it, we should say, than maybe used to be a moment. That's a very positive thing. But the values and the approach, I think, should be within the Messiah.
One of the integral components of being a chassid are the Chassidishe Yamim Tovim and Yom Pagra. Whether it's Hey Tevis, Yud Shvat, Yud Aleph Nisan, or Gimel Tammuz. These days give us an opportunity to connect with our Rabbeim, to connect with each other, and be better chassidim. What is the story behind each of these days? How did the Rebbe commemorate and celebrate these days? And most importantly, what are the lessons, the takeaways, and the action items Hamaisa Hua Ikir needed for each of these days? All of this and much, much more are answered in the new set recently published by Der Herr. Our Days is a journey through the Chabad calendar in story, meaning, and practice. With over 700 beautiful, glossy pages with elevated content, beautiful, beautiful photographs, you, your family, and friends will enjoy and live with each Chassidishe Yom Tov. This book is a must for every Lubavitcher home, for every shul, for every school. It is a perfect gift item. This will not collect dust. It will be used day after day, month after month, year after year. You can have this set. Go to derher.org/Our Days. Order your set today and start living with the Chassidishe Yom Tov. I heard a story. I think I heard from Meir Harlig that there was an asifa. I think his father was at an asifa called by the Frierdiker Rebbe, and they were discussed. It was a different abundant. His father was a rav, and there was different discussions happening about what the American Jewry needs, at that time in the 1940s and Tafshins. So someone brought up kashrus. With kashrus, so the Frierdiker Rebbe said kashrus vet man lazen for the ungarische, but let the ungarische take care of the kashrus. Unser Indian, what's our Indian chinuch? And I think what that means, what the Frierdiker Rebbe was saying there, that we're not. I mean, first of all, you have to do what's lacking, right? And if American Jewry, there's majority of American Jewry is not keeping Torah and mitzvahs, so that's what we need to be misasik with. That's much more important than us having chalav Yisrael and good meat to eat for the Shabbos. But it's also like that became. I mean, when the Rebbe came to America, America is the Yoni Chinuch. I mean, that was the whole thing about education. It's mamish the whole Derech Shvi was built off of Chinuch, and it's I mean the Rebbe Rashab, the famous Hayom Yom, the Rebbe Rashab says you have to think about Chinuch half an hour every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at it recently. I think it's mashma. A lot of people like feel guilty about it. That means they have to think about Chinuch of their own children half an hour every day. Probably means that too. But if you look at the Lashon, I believe that it's about Chinuch, general, about how to educate Jewish children. I think it's mamish like a focal point of the Rebbe, and also the Rebbe in Igris, you could see that that the Rebbe gives as a tikkun to people, that people that are struggling with Chatz Neurim, the Rebbe tells them to be misasik in chinuch of children. Like this is like a mamish a tikkun for your neshama, for certain things that you transgressions that you've done. So it's like this is like it's the focus of everything. The chinuch, and the chinuch ataris hakedesh. That is obviously. I'm saying you figure out that it depends on the place. That's what the Rebbe's approaches.
Yeah, I mean when our school was becoming more official, so I was discussing with Rabbi Mendy Cohen, who's the Shliach in the general area, and the school that we took on when we became more official was really through his direction and encouragement, because it's really a school that's servicing the whole greater Sacramento area. It's not like even though it's an Ar Chabad house, but it's not just for our own community. So everything is been through his leadership. So at the time we're talking about some general direction for the school. So we discussed that I should reach out to a few of the Menale Hamoistas of the original schools, or some of the schools that started decades before, to get some insight, some of the Rebbe's hadracha and how the schools were established, what's the right guiding. And we were trying to figure out Mudachol, not the Mudachol, how much of it, yes, and what's the approach? Who are we catering to? Are we catering to the Shluchim's kids? Are we catering to our community? Like, we're trying to get a sense. So somebody told me that Rabbi Wolf in Chicago had a minor from the Rebbe about it. So I reached out to him, among others that I reached out to as well. And if I remember correctly, I don't think I'm quoting the minor exact, but something to the tune of that the Rebbe basically he wanted to know. I believe his question was whether he should open a day school. I don't know if he asked like in New Haven or if he Worcester, or it should be like a cheder like in Detroit. And the Rebbe
One has
told
them with a
him,
chayil and one has zero. Okay.
I don't know if that was the definition or whatever, but he said that the answer was that it's tolui kefi atzas or das yedidi or chabad shalasar, something to that effect. So I said, okay, so that's interesting. So how did you take so he's like, so we decided we're going to make a day school. It's not going to be a cheder. So I asked him, I said, so Rabbi Wolf, you believe you have a day school? He said, yeah, we run a day school. What do you mean? It's not a cheder. So Cheder Lubavitch in Chicago is a day school. So I thinking to myself, if that's a day school, then, what's left on the table?
Right.
It's just that's an interesting...
Yeah, I mean, even in Crown Heights, there was a Latera opened.
Right.
I mean, ultimately, that looks like that's the Rebbe's Ratzin is where appropriate and possible to have pure Lamud Kodesh, and the Rebbe is very passionate about it, and the Rebbe speaks about it, and apparently subsequent to that, Fabringen is when Alatera was established. But
Right.
there's also Lubavitch Yeshiva that
100%.
that existed, and even in Bedford and Dean there were different tracks. By the way, there was
Well,
just
Bedford and Dean was a thing older for older kids. No, was it for young kids also?
yeah, for young kids, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They had both, but they also had a track of just the Kaddish at a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
that's something. And it's also interesting. Rabbi Wolf was on the podcast, and he mentioned that Rabbi Chadakov was a mechanich.
Mm-hmm.
The head of the maskiris of the Rebbe, by profession, I guess, he was a mechanich. So this was always a very central and focal point of the Lubavitch network. And I think Shluchim are doing it now more. There are more schools opening today
100%.
than before.
Yeah, I agree. So I don't want to get carried away. This is, whatever. But you mentioned it, so I'll make a comment on it. You don't like it, leave it for what it is. There's this thing, yes, Limud Kodesh, only Limud Kodesh, not Limud Chol, yes, Limud Chol. One thing I think it's important to clarify, and without this Nakoda, I think that oftentimes this conversation could be like misdirected. Say from the side of saying, Taras HaKodesh, only Kodesh, no Chol at all, and say from the side that says no, we need Chol. That a child needs to have a language that they can communicate in. They can read, write, and speak in that language. If they don't have that, you can't be mechanech them. So if Zachisa that you could speak, read, and write in Yiddish, ashrecha, 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 ashrecha. But if you're not there, then not to teach how to read and write a language. I'm not talking about tachlis, be able to have a job. They can communicate. I think you're missing. I don't personally. I haven't found anything in the Rebbe's Torah, and I'm not saying that I read it all. Could be I'm wrong, and I would love somebody should show me if I'm wrong, because I think it's personally important to me, and it's something that I'm involved with. But how could you be mechanech a kid without giving the ability to read, write, and speak a language fluently, appropriately?
I agree with you 100%. And we're veering off from the typical style of way this podcast works, but let's keep it real and natural. So we'll go with this. I know myself. I had children in a Meisef Chinuch. They have since moved to a different Meisef Chinuch, but there was no Limudei Chayil, period. And the kids came home and they were translating everything into English, like Bereshis in the beginning, which is not the way I grew up. I mean, Bereshis was in Onib, in Yiddish, and I was a kid. I knew how to write and read Yiddish. So I called the principal. I said, "What's the plan?" Meaning, it's the Am HaSefer, right? We read books and we write notes and we write Chassidishe Torah. I'm saying whatever it is, but they don't know how to read or write English, and I think that's what the Rebbe wants. But they don't know how to read and write in anything, or they're not learning how to read. Like I can't give them a book to read in Chinese, English, Yiddish. So the principal is giving me a whole explanation that whatever they're going to learn English on their own. I don't know, something that didn't make sense to me at the time. Ultimately, I ended up switching to a different Meisach Chinuch where it's also the Kaddish, but everything's in Yiddish, and it's great. First of all, the English part, I don't know, most kids end up picking it up on their own anyway somehow. But it's not but the point is that they can read, write, and articulate in Yiddish. Great, no problem. So I think you're 100% right that if for whatever reason it was decided that you can't do Yiddish, which is another conversation, which this talk may be beyond the scope of of this conversation, the Yiddish or not. But if they're not speaking Yiddish, they need to be able to do a test. There's a certain school that they just weren't giving out tests because the kids couldn't write anything. I don't think that's the Rebbe's kavana at all with the Kaddish.
I don't believe so. I mean, give you a smaller example. When I was a bacher in yeshiva, in the yeshivas, there's every Shabbos somebody says a maimer, right? It's a normal thing in most Lubavitch yeshivas. and the Bachrim say Maimorim. So when I was a Bachar yeshiva, I would say probably 99% of the time, the Bachrim, whoever was chazing the Maimer in Yiddish. They were always, here, Bachar that came from Australia, he said the Maimer was Chidush davar. A few years ago, I was visiting one of my kids in the yeshiva, and so Bachrim say Maimer, and the Bachrim say Maimer in English. Like at the first second, it was like a little uncomfortable. I was like, whoa, like what's Chassidishe Lubavitch yeshiva? Like I'm sifted as some Maimer in English. But then it's like if the Bachar can't say the Maimer in Yiddish, he doesn't speak Yiddish. I mean, he maybe understands, he can learn a sicha, but he can't chaz a Maimer in Yiddish. So you just say, oh no, okay, so ben chaz nishke Maimer. If that's the language you speak, so zog chassidus in English. Was Shliach? Is it so bad? Say it in English. Say it. Of course, Yiddish is beautiful and it's special and it's precious, and we know the Rebbe loved it and it was very dear to the Rebbe Yiddish. The Rebbe spoke in Yiddish. The Rebbe didn't have to speak in Yiddish. And then the Rebbe chose to speak in Yiddish. So the Yiddish is very important. I'm not undermining it. But if for whatever reason it's not there, to say that because of that, we're not going to give him the tools to communicate. But to communicate. As I mentioned, a medaber. What's the medaber? A medaber that can reden, right? A medaber has to be able to speak, to communicate. If you don't give him the tools to communicate, you haven't even started. You're not dealing with humans. It's like
I spoke to
training cows.
I spoke to a mashpia that gives he speaks in Yiddish in the shiurim. He said a sophisticated word. Bachrim didn't understand. So he said the sophisticated word in English, and the Bachrim didn't understand. He said, I don't know what to do here. I'm saying.
Batlonim.
Yeah. Okay, so that's
okay. There were always words that here and there a word. The Rebbe himself at the Fabrengens laughed on different occasions. He said I don't remember what the word was. The word that the Malamed said. He said, "Nicht the Malamed hat gewusst what the word is. Nicht ich verstanden." And nobody knew, but that's the word. We say, fine. So here and there, there's always a word that nobody chapped. Nobody.
Okay, and since you brought up the Yiddish, I'll just give a plug the other way, which is in line with what you're saying about that the old way is usually a good way. A lot of times when it comes to chinuch, we feel that, okay, whatever, it's a different time, it's a different place, and I grew up like this, but my kids are living in a different reality. So I think maybe you could debate how high on the pedestal Yiddish is in this conversation. Maybe that's a debate or not. I don't know. But if let's say you think that Yiddish is a value, right? Let's say that's something that you think it's nice that it's a lot of people are inclined to say, okay, whatever, it's a different time. Next, I can't even think that my kid should speak Yiddish. And a lot of them, that's an attitude that is wrong. Because just like you're saying that, the Rebbe always spoke about the generation gap. And the Rebbe is saying that we have to, the lack thereof, there is no generation gap. So obviously there is, today is not 30 years ago, and 30 years ago is not 30 years before. But a lot of times we like take it for granted. Okay, there's a generation gap and forget it. But sometimes, when it comes to the Yiddish itself, there's a certain a child that can at least understand Yiddish is light years ahead. It just in Lubavitch. Say, first of all, you can understand the Rebbe. Second of all, you can read look at the sichos. Third of all, you don't have you can hear a vart of Chassidim in its original and understand it. It's just, I'm putting in a commercial for this just as part of the theme of what you're saying, that sometimes seeing the value in just the way things were done, this might be included in that.
100%. No, I agree, and I think that people should be inspired, and even if it's if it's not the whole thing, it's also good to teach certain things in Yiddish. I think in our school, which Bechlal is not a Yiddish speaking school, we still make an emphasis to teach all the kids how to say the Manishtan in Yiddish. There's certain things that, obviously teach them how to say it, they should understand it in English also. But every kid, even the kids who are non from families, they should be able to go home and say a Manishtan in Yiddish. It's a beautiful thing. They're not learning Yiddish because of that, but Yiddish is something very precious and something that Rebbe really cared about very, very much. So definitely we should try, but we have to be realistic. I think one of the biggest proofs to this balance is the dead head. What's the dead head? You taking a platform that is designed to impart the lachluchis of Chassidishkeit. And really, the dead head should be a Yiddish magazine. That's if you want it to be appropriate.
Or
in
Lashon Kodesh, yeah.
In Lashon Kodesh, whatever. It should be, the way it should be. But what's the whole part of that head? Is that let's be realistic. Yes, we all should learn Yiddish, but we have a huge segment of our society. I'm talking about our Nash society that is not Yiddish speaking, or at least not fluent in Yiddish speaking, and even not Lashon Kodesh speaking. And right. if we need to reach them in English, then we need to do that. And that head manages to communicate these values without compromising in the integrity and the Reichkeit and the juiciness of the lachluchis, but b'sfas Medina.
Yeah.
So people can relate to it. It's a beautiful thing.
It's something that's
what the Rebbe wants.
It's something that I tell people all the time, especially when I talk to donors. To the hair, it's a question I get, like, what was the genesis of the idea? The answer is very simple: that not every bacher or every anash is able to access material because they're all in Lashon Kodesh and in Yiddish. So it was felt that this needs to be available in English. I mean, that's very simple. Yeah, so 100%.
But what I want to emphasize is, and I'm preaching to the choir. You don't need me to tell you why that head is important and beautiful. But I think this is the novelty of this approach, and I feel that in a certain way, this is what we're striving to do in our Moised Chinuch as well. On one hand, we need to adapt to the crowd. We need to adapt to the audience who we're catering to. But on the other hand, in the process of doing that, we don't have to compromise kihus there whatsoever on the message, on what we're giving over. So that their head could say, oh, it's an English magazine, so it's going to become a watered down version. We'll have some things. No, it's if you translated the hand in Lashon HaKodesh, it would be like, perfect, top of the line Chassidishe magazine. And it's just that's in English. Even the things that had didn't do right away, but they started to do, that you put in the years. You put the Hebrew year and then you put the English year. I think it's a beautiful thing. So Misyachas to the English year. Listen, the poor guy who's reading it doesn't know what 5672 is. So give him the Mara. Give him a reference.
Sometimes the Erechim of the head don't know either.
We all live in this Doir Yosem. But I think that's the point I'm saying here with the Chinuch as well. In one hand, we have to make a Moised Chinuch that could be realistic for a non-frum kid to join. But I don't think that in the process of doing that, we need to water down the level of the Chinuch. Say, if you want a non-frum kid to join, then you have to teach social studies, and you have to have 5 hours a day of chol and maybe 1 or 2 hours of kodesh and Gemara. Who's the kids going to learn Gemara? What are you crazy? They not understand. You should teach them about the Alter Rebbe and Yutas Kislev. Tell them a sicha. Come on, let's be honest. These are not. I think that we could do both. We could make the style of the chinuch in a way that it's relatable, and we don't have to water down. We don't have to compromise on the standard and the values of what we're teaching.
I think what you say makes a lot of sense. Also, if you think about it in general, how we take Chassidus and teach it to people. Right? The Rebbe said that Labavish is nishkei mafleg, Chassidus is nishkei maflega. The Rebbe is from the Alter Rebbe. That it's not a party. The Rebbe said the first night, Basa Lagani, Yud Shvat. And I think it's the same exact concept with the way we deal with Yidden in general. Like, they aren't like, it's not like this Yid is not shaykh to hear about, I don't know, Yutas Kislev. He's not shaykh to hear, in 10 years, once he comes a lot closer, then I could tell him about it. he's shaykh to hear about it on day one, just like he's shaykh to Chassidus on day one, right? He's shaykh to Perek Tanya on day one. It's the same. It's a very, so depending on what level it is, you're gonna have to explain every line and what everything means, or you're gonna have to explain every 3 lines, depending on what he knows and where he's holding in knowledge. But everything is for everybody. That
100%.
this is an essential core, attitude of the Rabbeim and of the Rashvi, especially. I'm saying this is like a very
I mean, the
important
Rebbe
thing.
credited to the Frierdiker Rebbe, but I don't know if it actually happened in the times of the Frierdiker Rebbe, that the idea of being Meifitz Torah and Chassidus in all the languages. The Rebbe pushed every Tanya should be translated. What was recently I saw a Tanya translated in Chinese?
Yeah.
Tell me how many Chinese are learning Tanya? The Rebbe wanted, and if I'm not mistaken, I remember hearing that story. The Rebbe asked specifically. The Rebbe 40 years ago wanted a Tanya in Chinese. Was that from a Tanya in Chinese? The Rebbe, they don't compromise the message and say in Chinese we're going to make a small little book that has some snippets of no Tanya, the Zelba Tanya that the Bacher is learning in yeshiva, and that you're the same Tanya the Alter Rebbe wrote page by page in Chinese, in English, in French, in Russian, this is the idea. We have to be able to. That's the Rashvi. I believe in some sichas the Rebbe speaks that it's the Frierdiker Rebbe, whatever. But I don't
No,
know.
because the Frierdiker Rebbe did translate. I think into German. There were certain things that the Frierdiker Rebbe did do. Yeah, but obviously when the Rebbe kochs in it so much, that this is like the whole.
Right.
It really happened in a real way during the Rebbe's Nasius.
Right.
There's I know of a person that his first, he's from for 50 years, but his first interaction was by, he happened to be in someone's house and pulled off, this is in the 1960s, and pulled off an English Tanya off a shelf and started reading it and was fascinated by the concepts. Someone that didn't have a background, b'chlal, in Jewish education.
That must have been a very bright person, because I don't know how you can read those Tanyas back then and actually understand.
Happens to be it was, but it's, you think about it, it's like the Rebbe the Rebbe was very happy about the Tanya being translated into English then.
Yeah.
You open it up, exactly like you're saying, like, what is this? This is not lessons in Tanya line by line with explanation. This is, straight up in English, and like, that's it. It's Rebbe, it's Torah, it's Chassidus, it's Torah Shebeksav Chassidus. Now it's accessible. I mean, you have the same thing with Tanya itself. You don't learn if you learn Tanya without a teacher, without a help. You also even if your day is safer, it's hard, right? So this is it's the same concept. Okay, so very insightful, and I think that your approach is unique. It's a very unique. I never heard of it. I never heard anything like this before. This type of school and type of attitude, and that you're able to. I know in other communities there's been an issue when a school that was started for, like a Hebrew academy, and then became an Anash school, and people can't figure out how to correlate both the things together. And you're going on we're setting it up that it's for everybody, but taking the higher approach. It's very valuable. It's very interesting. I met a Yid.
I think, in our situation, just we have the advantage that because we're in a small community and because there's no like infrastructure, so we have the flexibility to if you want to say, to play with this, to do this. And I think that a few years ago I shared this idea, like you have the clean slates. In many of the communities where you have already an established presence, even established, I don't mean necessarily Anash, but you have the Orthodox, the conservative, and you have whatever. You have things that there's ways people do things, people understand. So it's a lot harder to navigate. But when you come to a place and nobody knows anything, you could tell them about Yud Aleph Nissen, you could tell them about Yom Kippur. They never heard of either one. So it makes no difference. You could tell you. So if you tell them about Yud Aleph Nissen before Yom Kippur, what happens? Nothing. Like it goes along with it. And I think we have that opportunity in the Chinuch as well. But I do feel that in as the reach of Lubavitch is growing, and shluchim are making greater efforts and having more in reach to be able to mamish reach every single yid, that in some way in every community, as per the dynamics of that community, I think that's something that's inevitably going to have to get there, and then maybe that may also solve some of the shlichus crisis with people trying to figure out. So many young guys want to go shlichus where they're going, but if chinuch becomes more central in communities b'chlal, and it should be a concept that we could. It's not mufrach to go and reach out to a non-frum family and invite them to a school, a Yiddish school that's not watered down. It's a regular Yiddish school, and it's possible. You have that already starting. There's the Hillel in Milwaukee. It's a high school, a regular high school. It's just boys. It's not mixed, and it's catered more for non-frum kids, but this idea of creating the chinuch, the process, with all the infrastructure that we have now, with the Hebrew schools and the C kids and the C teens and the college campuses and the young Jewish professionals, we were already covering the whole segment. But now we have to fill in the chinuch. We give them the mayon k'moishehu, not just the psatipo mina mayon, the mayon osecho chutza, right? That's the whole word.
I met a yid recently that told me that he went to a Lubavitch school, one of the Achetims. We'll leave the location out. It says like in the 1960s or 70s, and he tells me, I had all these teachers. And he starts naming me all the Lubavitcher teachers that he had. I never heard about the Rebbe or about Chabad. When I came to New York, I heard about the Rebbe, and I went to Fabringen or whatever. So I feel like that was then. That was at that time. Maybe they were supposed to do that. I don't know. But today it's a whole different ballgame. It's Deir Ashvi, it's Ikus of the Mashiach, and the Mayan is out there, and it's for the taking for everyone.
Now that you're mentioning this, Asino Lahacha, Bechlal, the Rebbe's reach, Baruch Hashem. I mean, it's become so incredible, and especially even talking the last few months, that even if the Chassidim don't want to talk about the Rebbe, it's too late. The world already found out, and
Right.
the world leaders are fighting over who's more connected with the Rebbe. So forget the Chassidim, the Daf Shinus and the Shabin. They don't need us anymore. They already found the Derech Alein, and Kamufan, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but yeah, I mean, today the Rebbe is popular. It's not something we have to anymore be second guessing. Should we say, should I take a guy to the aisle or not? Today, that's it. All the big hot shots of the world, everybody's running to the aisle. That's it's amazing, really. If you stop and think about it, it's unbelievable. And this is mamish. I think even post Gimel Ta'amos Gufa, it's mamish. The most recent development in a certain way, and it's amazing. It's amazing. This is mamish. Mashiach has to be coming. No other option.
Yeah, and the Chassidim. I mean, there's a word from Geshe Mendel. So it's coming outside that you're gonna want to get into the Fabringen 770, and it's going to be full of other people. You're not going to be able to get in.
Right.
The Us Chassidim won't be able to even get in. So I think we're starting to see.
I hope you didn't give up your locker over there. That you had then.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Yashakeyach Rabbi Yossi. I really appreciate this, and I think it's a fresh perspective that many people will benefit from.
Shkoyach, thank you for the opportunity, and it's a pleasure to verbring with you. Aleva Hatzlach, keep up the great work, Yossi. You're doing great, and that hair and everything, it's beautiful. So, Michael Al Khoyel.
Thank you for the encouragement. Hatzlacha.